5:05 on your Friday afternoon. The public inquiry into the contaminated blood scandal of the 1970s and 80s has heard its final evidence today. It's after more than 4 years of statements, and it's thought that around 30,000 people were infected with HIV or hepatitis C. It's been called the worst treatment disaster in the history of the NHS. Katie Walford from Darley Abbey was 10 years old when her father David, a haemophiliac, died in 1998 after being infected with contaminated blood. She told me what happened to her dad.
So my dad was receiving blood products to help increase his factor VIII levels, which his body couldn't create himself due to a condition called haemophilia. Now, haemophilia itself is something that you can have a good, high quality of life, but the blood products he received was actually contaminated with Hep C, HIV, which he did contract, and the HIV did develop into AIDS, which led to extensive physical problems, illnesses, mental health problems, and it did ultimately take his life when I was 10 years old.
And I guess as a 10-year-old, that's still quite vivid. You're old enough to know what's happening.
So the issue with that is, yes, what we understand about child development is I certainly did have the capacity to understand, but a lot of the healthcare professionals who were meant to be guiding, supporting, advising individuals with these diseases and viruses was don't tell anyone. The stigma alone associated with homosexuals and how they span it and put a lot of nasty spins, which the LGBTQ plus community ended up getting the blame for, which it wasn't them. And they were basically advised not to tell anyone. So there were individuals who were going through this on their own if they didn't have anybody they felt safe to talk to. Thankfully, my dad did have a loving, devoted wife who supported him right up until the end. And even now, she also is a strong campaigner through all of this. So no, I didn't get told. I knew he had haemophilia. I was used to him having medication because that was part of his life, but I had no idea in terms of these other illnesses that he had. And it wasn't until I was 12 years old, so 2 years after he died, that I actually found out the true extent of why my dad died so young.
Wow. And how do you take that in?
Not very well. It's taken years and years and many more years to come to truly wrap your head around it. The individuals that should have been there to support not only my dad but his family didn't. We were failed time and time again. And then learning about that later on, it puts a very scary spin on the world around you and the people who you're supposed to be able to trust. It caused a lot of tensions, frictions, family dynamics to break down, and it was a very, very lonely time. I never really particularly spoke about it openly, honestly, until really the inquiry started. Before then, I had certain people who did know, who I was comfortable with to talk to about it, but now many, many people have actually been able to be given a chance to use their voice and speak about it.
And of course, that inquiry comes to an end today. The findings will be out in the summer. Do you think that will bring you any kind of closure, Katie?
Certain levels of closure. I don't think this is a black and white situation. There is so much to it. So in the summer, I'm hoping that a clean, clear timeline of events will be able to be published. Those responsible within the NHS or the government at the time to be named and documented, to be held accountable. I want, personally, my hope in the summer will also be documentation of the full extent that the NHS disaster has impacted the community, the quality of life, the mental strain, the financial strain. And I do think with the amount of evidence that we have been given, there is no shadow of a doubt that criminal charges will follow. That is my hope. That is what I feel should happen.
There's the compensation side. So some, not all families of the victims have received up to £100,000. Did you receive anything, Katie?
No, I am a child of, so currently as it stands with the compensation that has been given out, I have not personally received. My mother, however, she did, and thankfully we have a family dynamic where she was able to provide some for myself and my brother who's older than me. But not everybody gets that. There are individuals who lost not one but both parents, so they are at the moment completely in the dark. Parents of, they don't receive anything at the moment either, and it is a worry because these individuals should be compensated as well. So I think in terms of the summer conclusions and the statements, I'm hoping the compensation framework will also include those individuals as well, because they have every right to be validated in their pain and their loss as well.
It's not for you, though. This isn't about the compensation, is it? It's about getting justice.
It's not about the compensation. Obviously, money is a certain type of language certain individuals listen to more. For myself and for the majority, if not all of the community, the cliche is that's not going to bring our loved ones back. What it will do is give financial support and aid that's been long overdue. But ultimately, it's about those individuals who are responsible to be held accountable, and for this to go down in history of, it may not be straight away, it may not be in a few years, but you will eventually be caught out in your ethical and moral injustice. And I do hope that they make some peace and amendments to that, because they're no longer able to hide.
Those individuals, I mean, who's responsible? Are you aiming this at individuals within the NHS? Is this aimed at individuals in the government? Who do you want to see punished?
There are individuals within the NHS and within the government that may not be current right now within those two sectors that should be held accountable. They are individuals there who have signatures all over paperwork, who condone the way these individuals were treated like guinea pigs, and their actions being justified for science and medical research. But there's evidence to suggest that they were also seeing this as an opportunity to get rid of individuals who drain the NHS. There's actually documentation of that, saying that these individuals are cheaper than chimps. So reducing these people, these human beings, to animals to test on is just barbaric. It's just absolutely vile. So there are individuals that are still living today that need to know that that type of explanation is not good enough, and criminal charges, I hope, will come along their way.
If that does come out, I mean, you've clearly stated what you're hoping for when the findings are released in the summer. Will you then have closure?
I will have closure as and when the government, having seen the results come summer, act upon it.
What do you think your dad would think about the fight you're taking on here, Katie?
I think he would be proud. I think he'd also be worried, because it's taken so much out of myself personally. The mental health issues that have come from all of this should not have happened. I was 10, and everything that followed then, everything coming out, all the work I've had to do, not just for myself, but for my own family. I think he'd be proud, but he'd also want me to be able to take a breath, take a step back. There's so much more happiness and joy to be had in life, and I want to do that for him. So I think that's what he'd be wanting.
That's Katie Walford from Darley Abbey.